They handed me an apron at my own family's party. Have you ever walked into a room full of people who share your last name and realize not one of them truly sees you? The day my family turned me into unpaid help at my cousin's $1 million engagement celebration, I smiled, tied the black apron around my waist, and said nothing. They thought silence meant weakness. 45 minutes later, the most influential businessman in the entire city would ignore every VIP at the ballroom and walk straight into the service corridor asking one question: "Where's Claire?" But before I tell you how everything changed, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Stories like this remind us that respect isn't bought with money. It's earned by character. My name is Claire Donovan. I'm 33 years old. According to my relatives, I have a boring office job. According to international corporations, I'm one of the crisis consultants they call when billion-dollar mergers are collapsing. My clients sign confidentiality agreements before speaking to me. My family never bothered asking what I actually did. They had already decided who I was years ago. The quiet one. The plain one. The cousin who never married. The woman who spent too much time working and not enough time finding a wealthy husband. So when my cousin Natalie announced her engagement to Brandon Sinclair, the son of a famous real estate dynasty, the entire family acted as if royalty had entered our bloodline. For 6 months, every conversation revolved around the engagement. Designer dresses, celebrity guests, luxury wines, imported flowers, private musicians. Everything had to look perfect. Everything except me. 3 days before the event, Aunt Linda called. "Claire, sweetheart, could you arrive a little early?" "Of course. We're a little short on people helping backstage." I hesitated. "You mean volunteers?" She laughed. "Oh, don't make it sound so dramatic. Family helps family." I agreed. Big mistake. The ballroom occupied the top floor of the prestigious Lancaster Hotel. Crystal chandeliers reflected against polished marble floors. Every chair was wrapped in ivory silk. Every table displayed imported orchids. The decorations alone probably cost more than my first apartment. When I arrived, a young event coordinator approached carrying folded uniforms. "Staff check-in." I frowned. "I'm a guest." He looked confused. He checked his clipboard. "Claire Donovan?" "Yes." He handed me a black apron. "Mrs. Linda instructed us to assign you to hospitality support." Hospitality support. That sounded much nicer than unpaid waitress. Before I could respond, Aunt Linda appeared. "There you are." She kissed my cheek before adjusting the apron herself. "You don't mind helping, right? Natalie has so many important guests attending." I forced a smile. "I thought I was invited." "You are invited." She lowered her voice. "But this way you're actually useful." Useful. The word landed harder than she intended. Nearby cousins glanced over. Some tried hiding amused smiles. Others didn't bother. Natalie finally entered wearing a custom designer gown for her engagement photos. She looked radiant. Everyone surrounded her. I waited until the crowd thinned. "Congratulations." She hugged me quickly. "Thanks." Then she looked at the apron. "Oh good. Mom found someone to handle backstage." Someone. Not Claire. Not her cousin. Just someone. Before I could answer, photographers called her away. The rest of the afternoon blurred into carrying trays, directing vendors, locating missing champagne glasses, and escorting guests. Several executives assumed I worked for the hotel. One elderly couple tipped me $50. I politely declined. They insisted. I accepted only to avoid embarrassing them. Ironically, the man offering me a tip unknowingly managed one of the investment firms that had hired my consulting company 6 months earlier. He recognized my face. He simply couldn't place where. By evening, more than 400 guests filled the ballroom. Politicians, developers, media personalities, luxury brand owners. Every conversation centered around status. Every introduction included net worth. I wasn't assigned a seat. I wasn't listed on the guest chart. When dinner preparations began, I asked one coordinator where family members should sit. He checked again. No table assignment for Claire Donovan. He looked genuinely uncomfortable. "I'm sorry." I found Aunt Linda near the stage. She barely looked at me. Just eat later with the catering crew. For a second I couldn't breathe. Not because I was hungry. Because in that single sentence she had quietly erased me from the family. I walked into the service hallway behind the ballroom. Metal carts rolled past carrying silver trays. Steam drifted from industrial ovens. Kitchen staff rushed between stations shouting timing instructions. One young chef smiled sympathetically. "Long night." I nodded. "You could say that." He pointed toward an empty folding chair near stacked supply boxes. "Sit for 5 minutes." So I did. Away from chandeliers. Away from speeches. Away from cameras. I listened through the swinging doors as applause erupted inside. Natalie's father raised a toast celebrating everyone who made tonight possible. My name was never mentioned. Oddly enough, that wasn't what hurt most. The worst part was realizing I wasn't surprised. Because this wasn't new. When I graduated at the top of my university class, they skipped the ceremony for a golf tournament. When I bought my first condo, they asked whether my employer helped with the mortgage because surely office assistants don't make that much. When I traveled overseas for work, they joked I was probably booking conference rooms. No one asked. No one listened. Eventually, you stop trying to explain yourself. You simply let people believe whatever version of you makes them comfortable. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No messages. Then my secure device, kept in a separate inner pocket that almost nobody knew existed, vibrated once. Not a text. Not an email. An encrypted priority alert. My expression changed instantly, because only one client used that emergency channel. And if he was contacting me tonight, something much bigger than a family engagement party was about to happen. The billionaire wasn't looking for the host. The vibration from the encrypted phone lasted less than 2 seconds. To anyone watching, it would have looked like an ordinary notification. To me, it meant only one thing. Someone with an exceptionally high level of security clearance needed immediate contact. I stepped away from the kitchen traffic and into a narrow hallway beside the freight elevator. Only after checking that no one was nearby did I unlock the device. The screen displayed a single message. Arrival confirmed. 18 minutes. Below it was the sender's name. Nathaniel Brooks. Most people in the ballroom knew him as the billionaire who had built one of the largest private investment groups in North America. The financial magazines called him ruthless. Television hosts called him brilliant. Board members called him impossible. I simply called him Nate. Not because we were close friends. Because after working together through 3 international acquisitions and one corporate disaster that nearly destroyed his empire, formal titles had disappeared. 3 years earlier, his company had been hours away from bankruptcy after a hostile takeover. Every advisor recommended surrender. I designed another solution. It required negotiations across 4 countries, 32 separate legal teams, and non-stop work for almost 5 days. The strategy succeeded. His company survived. Neither of us ever discussed it publicly. The confidentiality clauses alone were worth more than most houses. Tonight he wasn't attending because of Natalie, or Brandon, or the Sinclair family. He was stopping by because he had learned I would be here. I quickly typed one response. Service hallway. Do not announce arrival. His reply appeared almost immediately. Understood. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. When I returned to the kitchen, the head chef looked exhausted. Claire, could you carry these desserts out? Sure. I balanced 2 trays while servers opened the swinging doors. The ballroom sparkled under hundreds of hanging lights. Music floated across the room. People laughed over expensive wine. No one noticed the woman carrying pastries. Except my younger cousin Ethan. He stared. Then quietly whispered to another relative. Within seconds several people glanced toward me. One smirked. Another chuckled. I heard someone mutter, I didn't know Claire finally found a career. Laughter followed. I kept walking. Responding would only give them entertainment. As I reached the dessert station, Natalie approached with Brandon. She lowered her voice. Claire, would you mind staying out of the photographer's background tonight? I blinked. What do you mean? The black apron. She offered an uncomfortable smile. It might confuse people. Brandon avoided eye contact entirely. For several seconds I simply looked at them, then nodded. Of course. She looked relieved. You're the best. No. I thought silently. I'm just the easiest person to overlook. Back inside the kitchen, one dishwasher noticed my expression. You okay? I smiled politely. Long day. He handed me a bottle of water. Families can be rough. He had no idea how accurate that statement was. 10 minutes later the speeches began. Guests filled every chair. The engagement video played across giant LED screens. Childhood photos. Vacations. Luxury holidays. Everyone applauded. I remained behind the service doors listening through muffled speakers. Then Aunt Linda hurried in. There you are. Without greeting me, she shoved another tray into my hands. The VIP lounge needs fresh drinks. I accepted it. As I crossed the private corridor leading toward the lounge, 2 security officers entered through the side entrance. Dark suits. Discreet earpieces. Professional posture. Not hotel security. Corporate protection. They scanned the hallway. One spotted me. Recognition flashed instantly. He walked over. Ms. Donovan. He nodded respectfully. Our principal has arrived. I answered quietly. Keep everything low profile. Yes, ma'am. Unfortunately, a hotel employee witnessed the exchange. He looked confused. Very confused. Because security officers who protected billionaires generally didn't address catering staff with military precision. Word spread surprisingly fast. Within minutes whispers moved through employees. Someone important knew Claire. Someone very important. I ignored it. Then headlights appeared through the tall windows overlooking the entrance drive. A convoy of black vehicles rolled to a stop. Guests nearest the lobby began pointing. Phones emerged. People stood. Brandon's father adjusted his jacket. Mr. Sinclair clearly believed the famous investor had come specifically for their family celebration. Hotel staff rushed to prepare the red carpet entrance. Natalie fixed her hair one last time. The master of ceremonies grabbed a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, we appear to have a distinguished surprise guest. His words stopped, because the lead security officer quietly took the microphone away. No public announcements. Confusion spread instantly. The ballroom fell silent. The front doors opened. Nathaniel Brooks stepped inside wearing a charcoal suit without a tie. Simple. Elegant. Confident. He acknowledged no one. Not the hosts. Not the politicians. Not the celebrities waiting near the entrance. His eyes swept across the room once. Then continued past every decorated table. Past the stage. Past the champagne tower. Straight toward the service corridor. People instinctively moved aside. The billionaire walked through the ballroom as if following an invisible line. Natalie's smile slowly disappeared. Brandon frowned. Mr. Sinclair actually took 2 steps forward with an extended hand. Nathaniel. Welcome to. Nathaniel never even slowed down. He passed him completely. The room became so quiet that even the musicians stopped playing. I was standing beside a stainless steel counter when he entered the kitchen. For 1 second every cook froze. Every server froze. Even the dishwasher stopped moving. Nathaniel looked around until he found me. Then a genuine smile crossed his face. There you are. He walked directly over and extended his hand. I've been looking everywhere. The entire kitchen stared. I accepted the handshake. I'm sorry about the location. He glanced at the apron, then looked around the industrial kitchen. His expression hardened. You weren't exaggerating. Before I could answer, Aunt Linda suddenly appeared behind him. Completely unaware who he was, she smiled politely. I'm sorry, sir. This area is for staff only. Nathaniel slowly turned toward her, then calmly replied, I'm aware. He looked back at me. Claire, would you mind explaining why the most valuable strategic advisor my company has ever hired is wearing a catering uniform at her own family's celebration? The words echoed through the kitchen. Someone dropped an entire tray of silverware. Metal crashed across the floor. And standing just outside the swinging doors, Natalie had heard every single word. The entire ballroom finally learned who Claire really was for several long seconds. Nobody moved. Natalie stood frozen beside the swinging kitchen doors, one hand still resting on the handle. Her face had gone completely pale. Behind her, Brandon slowly looked from Nathaniel Brooks to me as if trying to solve an impossible equation. My aunt recovered first. She forced an awkward laugh. "Oh, I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding." Nathaniel didn't smile. "There isn't." His calm voice somehow made the room even quieter. He looked directly at Aunt Linda. "Claire Donovan has advised 3 Fortune 100 companies through acquisitions exceeding $12 billion. A chef stopped slicing vegetables. A waiter almost dropped an entire tray of champagne. My aunt blinked. 12 billion. Nathaniel nodded. And she declined public recognition every single time. I finally stepped forward. "Nate, this really isn't necessary." He turned toward me. "It is when someone I respect is being treated like hired labor." The words landed harder than anyone expected. From the ballroom beyond the kitchen doors, guests had already begun gathering near the entrance. Curiosity spread faster than music ever could. People whispered. Who was the woman in the apron? Why was Nathaniel Brooks speaking to her like an equal? One of Brandon's business partners quietly approached. He stared at me for several seconds. Then his eyes widened. "I know her." Everyone turned. He swallowed. "I attended the Zurich restructuring conference 2 years ago." He looked almost embarrassed. "She was the lead negotiator." Someone nearby frowned. "The lead negotiator?" "Yes. The conference where Helix International avoided liquidation?" He nodded. "Without Claire Donovan, none of those companies would exist in their current form." The whispers grew louder. Natalie slowly stepped into the kitchen. "Claire." Her voice barely escaped her lips. "Why, didn't you ever tell us?" I looked at her quietly. "I tried." She frowned. "When?" "The Christmas dinner when Uncle Robert interrupted me after 30 seconds. The family barbecue where everyone changed the subject. The birthday lunch where you said business conversations were boring. No one spoke, because every example was true. I remembered each one perfectly." Nathaniel crossed his arms. "For the last 6 years Claire has refused interviews, refused magazine covers, and refused executive awards." He looked around the room. "She believes results matter more than attention." His eyes settled briefly on my black apron. "I suppose that's why none of you noticed." At that exact moment Mr. Sinclair entered. He was accompanied by 2 local politicians and several investors. Initially he wore the confident expression of a man accustomed to controlling every room. Then he recognized Nathaniel. His face lit up. "Mr. Brooks. What an honor." He extended his hand enthusiastically. Nathaniel shook it politely. Before Mr. Sinclair could continue speaking, Nathaniel gestured toward me. "I assume Claire is sitting at your head table." Silence. Absolute silence. Mr. Sinclair looked confused. Then toward Aunt Linda. Then toward Natalie. Finally his eyes drifted down to my apron. His smile disappeared. Aunt Linda nervously cleared her throat. "Actually, there was a little seating issue." Nathaniel interrupted. "You mean she doesn't have one?" No answer. He continued. "So the woman who personally negotiated my company's survival has nowhere to sit at her own family's event." Brandon suddenly stepped forward. "Claire, we can fix that right now." Natalie nodded rapidly. "Yes. We'll move everything. The front table. The VIP section. Anywhere you want." I studied both of them. For years I had wanted exactly this. Recognition. Respect. A place beside everyone else. But hearing the offer now, I realized I didn't need it anymore. I appreciate it. I untied the apron strings behind my back. The fabric slid into my hands. Then I carefully folded it. "I don't need another seat." Confused expressions surrounded me. Nathaniel watched silently. I placed the folded apron onto the catering counter. I only wanted to be treated like family. The sentence wasn't loud, yet everyone heard it. No one had an answer. The kitchen staff looked away awkwardly. Some guests lowered their eyes. Others suddenly became fascinated by their phones. The truth had become impossible to avoid. This had never been about logistics, or seating charts, or helping backstage. It had been about value, about deciding who deserved visibility, about believing wealth could be measured by appearances. Nathaniel checked his watch. Our reservation starts in 40 minutes. I smiled faintly. I almost forgot. Aunt Linda blinked. Reservation? Nathaniel answered for me. We're hosting a private strategy dinner. He casually added, 3 sovereign investment funds and 2 international CEOs will be attending. Several businessmen standing nearby visibly reacted. Getting invited to that dinner would have been the networking opportunity of a lifetime. Mr. Sinclair actually took one step closer. Perhaps after the engagement celebration we could all. I'm afraid not. Nathaniel remained perfectly polite. The guest list was finalized weeks ago. His eyes drifted toward me again. Claire selected everyone personally. I almost laughed, because it was true. Every attendee had been chosen based on competence. Not status. Not family name. Competence. Natalie slowly approached until only a few feet separated us. Tears filled her eyes. I thought you worked in administration. I know. You never corrected us. I stopped trying. She stared at the folded apron still resting on the counter, then whispered, I'm so sorry. I believed she meant it. But apologies arrived differently when spoken before humiliation instead of after it. Before I could respond, a hotel manager rushed into the kitchen. His breathing was uneven. Ms. Donovan. I turned. Yes. He looked mortified. I've just been informed that your suite has been upgraded. I frowned. I didn't request that. No. He glanced respectfully toward Nathaniel. It was reserved under your permanent executive profile. Even I looked surprised. Nathaniel shrugged. I've kept it active for years. Then he smiled. I figured one day you'd finally let someone else take care of the details. For the first time that evening, I laughed. And from across the ballroom, dozens of guests watched in stunned silence as the woman they had mistaken for catering staff stood beside one of the world's most powerful investors. Not as an employee, but as someone he clearly considered indispensable. No speech could have changed the room more than that single image. The only thing I took with me was my dignity. No one spoke for nearly 10 seconds. The kitchen that had been filled with clattering dishes and hurried footsteps only moments before was now completely silent. Nathaniel glanced toward me. Ready to leave? I looked through the open doors into the ballroom. The celebration was still there. The chandeliers still sparkled. The photographers were still waiting. The orchestra had quietly started playing again. But something fundamental had changed. The illusion was gone. People were no longer watching Natalie and Brandon. They were watching the woman who had been standing behind a dessert cart less than an hour earlier. I took a slow breath. Give me 1 minute. Nathaniel nodded. I'll wait outside. As he walked away, every conversation followed him with their eyes. The moment he disappeared through the lobby doors, Aunt Linda rushed toward me. Claire, sweetheart. She reached for my hand. I gently stepped back. For the first time all evening, I didn't pretend everything was fine. You embarrassed us, she whispered. I tilted my head. I embarrassed you? She looked flustered. I didn't mean it like that. But that's what you said. She opened her mouth again before quietly closing it. There was nothing left to explain. Mr. Sinclair approached next. His smile had returned, although it looked forced now. Claire, I understand there was an unfortunate misunderstanding. He carefully adjusted his cufflinks. I'd like to formally invite you to sit at our family's table. A few nearby guests nodded approvingly, as though offering me a better chair somehow erased the previous 6 hours. I smiled politely. Thank you. He seemed relieved. Then I finished my sentence. But I'll decline. The relief vanished. Instantly. You don't understand. Ido. Our guests would love to meet you. I'm sure they would. Then why refuse? Because now they knew my resume. Not because they suddenly knew me. I didn't say the words aloud. I didn't need to. The expression on my face answered for me. Across the ballroom, Natalie slowly walked toward us. Her makeup had been retouched, but traces of tears still lingered around her eyes. She stopped only inches away. I'm sorry. Unlike before, this apology carried no excuses. No explanations. No attempts to shift responsibility. Just 2 words. I'm sorry. I believed her. And because I believed her, I answered honestly, I forgive you. Hope immediately appeared on her face. Really? Yes. She exhaled with relief. Then I quietly added, but forgiveness doesn't erase memory. She stared at me. I spent years trying to earn a place in this family. I know. No. I gently shook my head. You know now. You didn't know then. I was always invited when someone needed help. I was never invited when someone wanted my company. The words hurt her. I could see it. But they were true. Brandon stepped beside her. We judged you. I nodded. You did. I wish we hadn't. So do I. Another silence settled over the room. This one felt different. Not hostile. Just honest. Finally, Natalie looked toward the folded black apron still resting on the catering counter. She picked it up herself. For several seconds she simply stared at it. Then, in front of everyone watching, she folded it neatly and placed it inside her own handbag. No speech. No dramatic gesture. Just quiet acknowledgement. Perhaps she wanted to remember. Perhaps she never wanted to see it again. Either way, it wasn't my decision anymore. Outside, another message vibrated on my secure phone. Nathaniel. Car is ready. I smiled. It's time. As I turned toward the exit, my father suddenly appeared. He had driven 3 hours to attend the engagement celebration. He had barely spoken to me all evening. Now his eyes were red. Claire. I stopped. I owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything. I should have asked about your life. He swallowed. I kept assuming. I know. I was proud of you. I know. But I never said it. For the first time that night, my own emotions threatened to break through. Not because of what he said. Because of how many years it had taken him to say it. I stepped forward and hugged him. Only briefly. Only enough to let him know I wasn't carrying anger anymore. When we separated, he quietly whispered, I hope this isn't goodbye. It isn't. It's just different now. He nodded. Some relationships survive because people change. Others survive because someone finally stops pretending. I walked through the grand lobby without looking back. Nathaniel was already waiting beside a black sedan. The driver opened the rear door. Before getting inside, Nathaniel glanced toward the ballroom windows where dozens of faces watched from behind crystal glass. You know, he said with a smile, every person in there would trade places with you right now. I shook my head. They're looking at the wrong thing. What do you mean? They think tonight changed my value. He waited. It didn't. The only thing that changed was that they finally noticed it. Nathaniel laughed softly. I've always liked the way you think. The car pulled away from the Lancaster Hotel. Behind us, the engagement celebration continued. The flowers remained beautiful. The speeches resumed. The photographs were taken. But every image from that night would forever include one invisible detail. The moment an overlooked woman quietly walked away carrying nothing except her dignity. And strangely enough, that turned out to be the most valuable thing anyone wore all evening. If you've ever been underestimated by the very people who should have believed in you first, leave your city in the comments below. Like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable stories, because sometimes the greatest success isn't proving people wrong. It's finally realizing you never needed their permission to become extraordinary.